What's up, everybody? We're back for part two of Amelia Earhart.
Good morning, LA, or afternoon, or whatever time it
New
is.
England, New York, all the states, all the cities, all the times.
This is
Portugal.
naturally off topic. Our
We
first
are,
time actually coming up with the name and saying it out loud
I
on
know,
the
it's kind of
pod.
crazy because like this last episode that's about to be published, it's not published yet. It's going out on Thursday, 9/26. That episode is still under incognito, so we're very excited to officially announce that we are now naturally off topic because naturally, when we start things, we say A, naturally a lot, and B, we go off
Actually,
topic a lot. We start with one
yes,
story,
exactly.
and it,
I
and
know the only concern with this title was that my husband Keith brought up to me that it sounds more like a lifestyle podcast, but the more I talk to people, the more they're like, "Well, you kind of are off topic." And like, "So what?" Like it sounds right. Like it sounds good.
we are exactly.
So, we brought it back and I think we're going to do this thing. It's going to be great.
So,
Um I'm super excited to like change it up.
me too.
And I don't want to spend too much time on ourselves because Megan, I do have to tell you, we did get roasted in the group chat.
Oh God, about
Actually.
roasted about our last like episode.
So
Has
the Mariana Trench one.
oh God, what did I say?
So our friends in the chat were all like, and I'm not going to name names. There was, well, they could might want to be shouted out, but oh well.
Really?
There was quite a few of them, probably three or four, who said, "Yeah, I'm listening to this episode. Yeah, I'm listening to this episode." And one in particular, said, "I'm listening to the Mariana Trench episode, and they're 10 minutes in, and they still haven't even mentioned the trench." And then as they kept like listening, they would come back in the chat and say, 26 minutes, and the first time it was ever mentioned. Oh, they went off topic. And then he like came back and he's like, they're finally talking about it like 40 minutes or whatever the number was. And I was like, okay, to be fair, I was just bringing up the idea to you. Like, let's come
Ah,
on, give me a
like let's
break.
take a seat. Let's relax there, buddy boy.
I said, wait until you hear our upcoming episodes. And then he said, I can't see Mariah spitting facts about anything for 45 minutes. And then Keith said, just give her 45 minutes to talk about Amelia Earhart and you will hear it.
Yeah, literally, that's all you talk about. And we love it though. We love it. So, all right, fine. We're taking note of our feedback from our listeners. Really quickly, nothing new with me other than a sick kitty, and I'm working a lot.
Yeah, it's been a struggle for me. I don't have much to add other than I was in Amelia Earhart land. We took like, what has it been since I saw you? Like 2 weeks.
2 weeks,
And
yeah.
I haven't really like delved in more because I was so deep in it that I was like, there's not much more I can find. But because it's now been 2 weeks, which I was worried about, I'm like a little nervous on how much I'm gonna remember here. But Megan has legit 20 pages on one of the theories, and it's one of the theories that I half believe in.
So, just to give you guys a little insight into what we're looking at today. So, last episode, we just talked about her flight and how she got to where she was. I do have a few recap notes that I was going to
Oh,
toss out
please,
there.
please
Um,
get it.
my main topics today about Amelia Earhart are how radio channels worked, which has a huge piece into her disappearance. That's one of my topics. And so sorry, all my notes are suddenly sticking together. Let me keep going here. Well, anyway, I have a lot of topics that, and I won't bore everyone by going through each one, but I'll tell the stories as they come.
How about I start to go on my tangent of the theories, and when I hit on one that you've researched, just please raise your hand. I'm just going to go for a brief overview of what we have to talk about.
Okay, so but before you do that,
So
just
official.
quickly recap. Amelia Mary Earhart was an American aviation pioneer, And this was a big thing we talked about on part 1. So if you're just listening now, please go to part 1, Amelia Earhart, and please start there. That is the start of our new podcast. That is officially naturally off topic. Everything before that is irrelevant. On July 2nd,
Fuck that.
1947, Earhart disappeared over the Pacific Ocean while attempting to become the first female pilot to circumnavigate the world. And we talked a lot about her, how she went to school and how she got into aviation. And with that, I am going to pass the baton to Mariah, who's going to get into the nitty-gritty of them conspiracies.
Yes, and before I get into that theory, I just remembered I was just in Washington, D.C. this past weekend, and I was trying to do more research because I went to the Aviation Museum and I
Oh,
went to the
I love that.
Capitol and all this stuff. Unfortunately, they didn't have much to add about the conspiracies, naturally, because why would they, right? But I will say, Amelia Earhart is actually one of the 2 statues that is in the Capitol.
Interesting. I did not know that.
Well, no, I mean, they have a million statues, but I mean, so basically every state gets to pick 2 statues that stay in the Capitol, and Amelia Earhart is one. Is it Kansas or where was she from again? Is it Kansas or Alabama?
Kansas. Yeah, she was in
Okay,
Kansas.
I thought it was Kansas.
I was thinking about it for a second. I was like, wait, what are you asking me?
Also, side note, fucking Helen Keller was in there, and I was like, what the fuck? Because she's not a real person. Just kidding. We'll get into that another time. Anyway,
Oh,
yes. So she disappeared, and I haven't touched this in a couple weeks, but I still remember she took off from Lake Papua New Guinea. She was heading to Howland Island. Um, she had communication with the Itasca, and it was very clear to everybody that they could hear her, but she couldn't hear them. At one point, the signal was very strong. The person comes out, he thinks that she's on the horizon. She's not. She says, "We must be on you, but we can't see you." And that was, like, part of the last time anyone ever heard from her. Howland Island had clear, clear skies at that time and, maybe some clouds, but, there are a couple theories of what happened here. The
uh,
first is the crash and sink. Sorry, Megan?
oh, sorry. I just wanted to pipe in too, just to give some context to what Mariah was saying. I
Oh,
did a little
yes,
bit
please
of
talk about the
research.
radio.
Well, beyond that too, I did a little bit of research about being 1,000 feet in the air. So, kind of what Mariah was saying. She was only 1,000 feet when she supposedly disappeared. And to start, yes, there were difficulties with the radio. Voice communications were hard to understand, and Earhart did not know Morse code. So because she didn't know Morse code, there was not another way. That would be I guess, the emergency way that they would communicate with each other. But at 1,000 feet, visual range would have been limited by the horizon and the island, no part of which rises more than 20 feet above sea level, would have been hard to spot from more than a few miles off. For any airplane, an ideal range can be calculated by the Breguet range equation, which takes an input and aerodynamic and propulsive efficiency and fractions of the airplane's initial takeoff, blah blah blah. So I know that was a lot of big details.
I was
So
gonna say, can you break that down to, like, the basic mind who's just getting into it?
so So the Itasca was at Howland Island to provide this communications, smoke signals, radio bearings to guide Earhart and Noonan as they approached the small isolated island in the mid-Pacific. Um, this particular article rejects the fanciful of many conspiracy and faulty navigation theories involving the loss of the 2 flyers. Earhart and Noonan attempted to fly from Laos to Howland Island and arrived in the vicinity of the island short of fuel and went into the sea nearby trying to find it. That's kind of what this person is saying. So because they were making smoke signals, it would have been conspicuous if only seen at sea level with a light blue sky in the background. Earhart and Noonan, however, because they're flying at 1,000 feet and the smoke seen from the perspective would have had an inky blue sea background. Color contrast would have been minimal. The odds were against them.
So
So
you're saying they wouldn't have seen the dark, smoky clouds. How is
right,
that?
right.
Like,
So
I don't buy that.
So yeah, so I apologize. So I know that was a lot of big words and I'm just taking literally just my notes with that. So yeah, so essentially this research that I'm doing is basically saying that the Itasca, because they failed to provide this timely radio beacon and these smoke signals to the point where even though she was flying at 1,000 feet, and maybe it seems that that would be easily spotted, because I know we said that like we feel like 1,000 feet isn't that high, but with the environment around them, it really was impossible for them to actually see the smoke signals, which is exactly why the radio was super, super important. So I have a
But
lot.
where I want to argue it though is it was a clear day in Howland Island, was it not?
It was,
I
but I
heard
guess,
to the west, I believe. This was memory from a while ago. To the west there was some clouds, but like, it's not
but,
it is a tiny, tiny island though. I will agree with you there.
and I think because the sky was blue and the water was blue, like the contrast of the
Oh,
light and like the colors of the water and the sky is really what made it invisible, is what this
would
article is saying.
but would you think that the island, since it is a different color, would stick out then? Unless they were going the
Yes.
wrong way.
Unless they were going exactly, which is why this article is kind of saying one of two things, that either A, they really just didn't see it. eh, Well, they're saying one of three things. They didn't see it, they were clearly in the wrong place, or the Itasca that was supposed to be sending these smoke signals did not send them out in time, which is what
Mm.
leads us into the fact that radio was so important back then. And you had mentioned the name of the original pilot that was supposed to go with her. Who was what was his name?
Originally, it was Harry Manning. He was the first navigator. He knew Morse code.
Right.
He got sent back for one reason or the other. Some people said it was because he was nervous after their crash. Some people said it's because his leave was like, time's running out.
Mhm.
So Fred Noonan took the place and he didn't know Morse code, as we talked about last episode.
Yep. So going into the radio channels and how this worked, in early 1937, several weeks before departing Oakland, California from Honolulu, the first leg of the intended westabout flight around the world, Earhart met at in a city called Alameda, California, with George Angus, the superintendent of communications for Pacific Division of Pan American Airways.
Okay.
Angus directed the radio communication and the DF network that supported the PAA, which is the division he worked for, Clippers on their Pacific crossings, and she was looking for help amongst Noonan's celestial navigation. The airline had specifically designed versions of an Adcock radio DF system and service at this location, the Alameda, California. Um, and this particular radio could take bearings on frequencies much higher than conventional loop type direction finders like Earhart's, and were effective in much greater distances. So she had gone to visit this guy asking for advice on types of radio communication that she should use for her final flight. He agreed to help her with this. However, this is where things get a little shady, shady. Um, there was a complicated is uh and there's so many big words that your girly here does not know. But there
Why
was
did you write it down then? You're supposed to paraphrase. You're stealing. You're
I know
stealing. You're
I'm
literally stealing
I'm
from these
literally reading other people's
people.
thing. Anyway, Um, so basically, the radio system that they decided to use could not transmit voice frequencies. So Earhart was straight up was like, I need them radio frequencies, otherwise I won't be able to communicate with you. So they decided that the aircraft would request the bearing of voice and frequency. So they ended up doing that. The arrangement was tested on a flight from Oakland to Honolulu, and it took bearings on 33105 kilohertz. So it for those who don't know what kilohertz are, it's like a measurement of radio frequency. And transmitted the bearings into Morse code on 2986 kilowatts. The flight handled much of the same as the routine clipper flight, Clipper fight, so as the ones they've tested. However, in March of 1937, you had mentioned this, she had done a takeoff and did a ground loop, which is very dangerous during
Mhm.
takeoff, and she had actually damaged
The
the
plane wing, like, catches under the wing. This is a
Yep.
refresher from the last time. It catches and they, like, kind of do a tumble across the, whatever you what's the it's not a fairway. The
parkway
runway.
runway. Ugh.
From my understanding was, she is flying to the Itasca. She says, "Take bearing on us on this thing," and you might be getting this, I might be cutting you off here, but I
Oh,
remember hearing that the Itasca wasn't equipped to take a bearing though, was the thing,
right.
correct?
Right. So that's exactly what I was saying. So like they tested a new one where it needed to be able to take bearings. She basically advocated for that.
A certain frequency it was that this plane or this boat wasn't equipped with.
Right. So they added it, and then when they were literally testing it, she ground looped the plane, and so it got damaged. So then she got a new receiver installed in her Lockheed, and it was an experimental model incorporating the quote unquote latest improvements. At
Mm,
this point,
I've heard mixed reviews on that. I heard, that she was offered the latest, like, equipment and denied it, but that's a theory. I heard that she did accept the most, like, equipped shit. It really depends on your source. They're conflicting. But I
right,
do know, and as you know, when she took off in Lake Papua New Guinea, that didn't matter because she, like, the belly of the plane bounced off the runway and clipped that receiver.
right.
And, like, she had no way to receive any messages.
Right. So, in my notes, it doesn't say whether or not she ended up declining or accepting, but she did get
Okay.
a new radio system, and it literally is an experimental model with a continuous tuning superhydron heterodyne that covered the spectrum from 150 to 10,000 kilowatts. It could
Megan doesn't even know what it is.
It's like so intense. It could receive voice, CW, or modulated CW signals that could be controlled remotely from the cockpit, and switch permitted the operator to connect the receiver to either the conventional wire antenna or the loop antenna. So I won't go into a lot of crazy detail. So basically she got this fancy schmancy radio and transmitter that at this point when she got this in her plane, there was only three in existence. So this is where we're going to get into the little bit of the details, which I think you can attest to, especially having all your theories. So it started where she started making mistakes in Miami after deciding to change her route to east about in late May in 1937. So this was during her across the US trip. She flew the plane to Miami where she had a trailing antenna and associated gear removed completely. And an Eastern
Mhm.
Airlines technician who had his own radio shop as a sideline did the work. Once again, Amelia obviously did not comprehend the devastating impact that it would have on her ability to communicate and use the radio navigation. With
There
only
it is again, why would she do that? That's exactly it. That's
right.
probably where I'm thinking, "Oh, well, no, she didn't have it."
So yeah, so
But
she
she
did have
did, but it got removed. That
yeah.
might be what I'm thinking.
And I think that's kind of what my notes are saying as well, is that essentially and again, guys, bear with us. This is a learning experience. I think next time I'll come with like maybe more paraphrase and less like literal writing.
Less literally reading from the fucking article.
So
Um,
yeah, so that's how that happened. So basically, so this person fixed it, and this is how basically things started to fail. The faulty plan, so now going into the faulty plan, the legs from New Guinea to Holland Island from Howland to Hawaii were the most difficult navigational portions of her big flight, and the three small vessels were stationed along the way to assist. Each planned to use the ship's transmitter as a radio beacon for Earhart's and Noonan's supplement to Noonan's celestial navigation. Precisely what happened next remains unknown, but it appears Earhart conferred with the local aeronautical communication specialist to get information she could use as a base to reply to Black. A plan was developed that fulfilled her requirements to the minimum of a receiver turning on her part. Earhart did not understand the relationship between wavelength and frequency, so there's a lot of talk about how she literally does not know radio, and she confused the figures and unwittingly specified incorrect frequencies from the swan and the Ithaca. She was correct. Thank you. She was correct with Ontario. So,
Could
basically,
you shout out this article?
yep,
I know you're reading the entire article. You just copy pasted this.
I did. I have all my sources.
Oh my God, man, that's so terrible. Okay, she's putting the fucking sources in the show notes, everybody.
So, it's literally called, it's so funny. Amelia Earhart Did Not Know Radio by USNI Magazine, Naval History
Damn.
Magazine. So, the
She had
Navy.
a tough time.
So basically, I apologize for going on a tangent there. Basically, what I moral of my tangent there was that Amelia had issues with radio, and we did more research into it, and it's very clear based on all the big words that I said that she
Yeah,
didn't
the
know.
thing is this could play into the theory, the crash and sink theory. She just didn't get it. She fucked up. Fred fucked up. Like they just couldn't find it. You know, the receiver was gone and they ran out of fuel. They crash and sink. That's the first theory. That's the official theory. Okay.
Right.
Um, Now, there's a couple other theories. One thing I do want to say that I kept thinking of the entire time you were talking about installing radios and stuff is that someone, I can't remember the exact name, I can't remember how official he is, admitted that he put two cameras in, I believe it was two, in the belly of the plane to take secret photos of things that she saw along the way. Keep in mind, this was before the Cold War, or not the Cold War, I'm sorry. It was right before World War II. What was World War II? It was 1939, was it? And
Yep.
she left in 1937. Um, okay, before we get in, I know Megan's researched Japan.
I did.
And so one of the theories is Japan. There's a couple of theories that go into that one. Um, so the other ones are the crash and sink, as we said, the Japan theory. That one branches off. There's one where she and Fred try to spy on Saipan and the Japanese. They get captured. One is Amelia, leaves and becomes Irene Bolam.
Yep. I got the
One,
story on that too.
yep. One is she and Fred get executed. One is where they die of like an illness. I'm pretty sure they just mentioned Amelia though. Fred gets lost in the details a lot of the time. And then there's another one where they crashed on Nika Maroro. I can't pronounce it very well, but on that one they have, they lived out as castaways, and then another one was they died and got eaten by coconut crabs, which my coworker tends to swear by is that they got eaten by coconut crabs, which I disagree, but anyway,
I have
it's
the
my own
information
opinion.
on that too.
You have that one too.
Yep.
You have the coconut crabs.
Notes. I got the
There's
goodie.
another one, and this is mine. Yeah, don't jump into it yet. My favorite one, and this is the one that I'm going on, is that she and Fred were heading to Howland. They realized, fuck, we definitely don't have enough fuel because they only had 950 gallons out of the 1,000 and something they could have had. And it was announced in the press tour they had the day before. Fred admitted that. He said, our plane cannot handle anymore. If we did, our plane wouldn't make it off the runway. The runway in Lake Papua New Guinea was way too small. So anyway, even with the cutback in the gasoline, they went off of that runway and the plane like fell and everybody like looked over the edge. This is how the reports go. And they were like, oh my God, did they fucking make it? But yes, they come up and they sail off. So anyway, the theory there is they realize, fuck, we're definitely not making it. They turn around. During that turnaround section, the radio doesn't pick up on them saying we're turning back. and all of the communication they were given was to Buka, this island on Buka,
Right.
and their plane crashed and sank there. Um, and with that, there's another one that's similar where because the Japanese theory is so strong and there's so much evidence, but there's so much evidence on Buka, there's a combined one where, and this one's a little crazy, but it makes sense. There was two planes. One was the one with Amelia and Fred where they go and they decide to turn back and they go to Buka.
Mm-hmm.
The other plane was with her friend Irene Bolam and her navigator. Don't remember the name they gave him. And they got captured on Saipan. The descriptions apparently do not look like Fred, but she and Amelia looked very similar. So a lot of the people say that it was actually Irene Bolam, and that would make sense if she came back and she lived out as Irene Bolam. She was a pilot as well, and she
Yeah.
looked just like Amelia. And on top of that, there was someone who wrote, and I tried to look it up a couple weeks ago because I was so fascinated by it. I wanted to fact check it. Someone had written to the Japanese, like somewhere high up, and they said, please admit, did you take Amelia or whatever? And they said, we don't know anything about an Amelia. We had an Irene Bolam.
Hmm.
Boom. Boom.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Hmm.
Megan doesn't believe in that one.
I don't know. I like okay, so like my research on the Japanese thing, so like I guess it depends. Why don't we take a short break and we're gonna go into the conspiracies very shortly.
Okay, let's get into the theories. All right. Nikomamoro Island, we're going to start with that one because I feel like Megan and I actually believe this the least, which is funny because, and I mean, I don't mean to speak for her, but this was the one that I believed in the most at the time that I first started researching it. And I felt like, and actually, a lot of podcasts, when you listen to it in the beginning and you don't get into the ones that actually fact check, there was one I listened to that was talking and they said, oh yeah, and then on this island they found this, and everything sounded like hit, hit, hit. It is her. And everybody was like, okay, so that's what happened. And they're like, yeah, pretty much. And they're like, we just didn't confirm it. They're like, yeah. No, so wrong. They did find stuff, but it
Mm-hmm.
really doesn't seem, yeah, like, so they did find freckle ointment. That one is kind of legit, okay, but like it's not even confirmed that that's what it is. But okay, I was there with you. But they also found on Nicomaroro, they found a navigator's bookcase, which at first I thought, okay, sealed, of course. Like back then, no one was flying. Of course it had to be them. Why were they on Nicomaroro? Well, the FBI themselves, this came from the FBI, they determined that it's not from her plane. Okay? So, they found aircraft skin, plexiglass, aircraft safety wire, all of these things could be from her plane. They could not be from her plane. A lot of sources say it is not from her plane. It's not confirmed at all. Could have been any. Also, a week after they crashed, like, within the week of them crashing, all over was looking for them. The whole world was looking for them. And no one, when like helicopters or airplanes or whatever the fuck was flying over that island after they crashed, no one was on the beach like raising their hand like come fucking help us. No one.
Yeah.
They looked there afterwards and that's when they found this stuff and they're like, oh, they must have died here. But like when they first initially went to that island, no one was there, or at least no one, like, come on, if you were stranded, you would listen for people, you would like be so aware to make it like, hey, I am here, please do not leave me. And obviously they checked and they left, so whoever was there was fine. um they found shoe parts. This was very convincing. There was a cat's paw replacement heel manufactured in the United States in the mid 1930s. This was for a left shoe of either a large woman or a small man size. They also found the sole of a woman's left shoe about size 8.5 or 9, along with shoe eyelets that would have belonged to the type of shoe that Amelia used to wear. Now, about this is the size of her foot is the biggest topic about this, and that it was not her. Um, her dance slippers are in a museum, and they are size 6. Her sister reported that she had tiny feet, so this didn't belong to her.
Mhm.
Um, the bones, they did find bones there. And there was a scientist or whoever you want to call him in Fiji who tested them and said, no way this could be of European descent. This is not them. This has to be bones of like a small, stocky man and whatever it was. And he just discarded them. Okay, I agree. If you don't think it was them, okay, but don't discard them. That was actually kind of crazy. He burned them.
Hmm.
Why? I don't know why. Um,
That's weird.
anyway, yeah, I mean, if you she definitely could have. I'm not saying it's 100% no. Keith's looking at me right now like, why the fuck would they burn the bones?
No,
Your
that's a
question
big
is as
thing.
good as fucking mine. Why would they fucking burn the bones, dumbass? Like, then they could have at least counted it out for sure, even if it wasn't her, like nowadays technology.
No, literally, that was a big thing in my research going on into the coconut crab thing. Like literally, like all like literally all the articles said evidence is lost, and it's just frustrating because yeah, literally, why like that almost like insinuates why did you burn the bones? Like even if it wasn't her,
Right.
like is there something going on that's bigger than this that maybe we didn't know about?
So
That
on
oh,
Mororo, on this island, a lot of people think that she died and was eaten by coconut crabs because of the lack of bones. There wasn't a full skeleton. Um, I always wondered why specifically coconut crabs are they bringing this up. So I asked Megan to look up a little bit more about coconut crabs. Could you please let me know?
oh yes. Okay. So coconut crabs just by nature are the largest land-based crustaceans. They typically are actually known as like gentle giants, but they can grow up to like for example their legs themselves can be 3 feet.
That's
So
disgusting. That's
yeah,
like half of my size.
yeah.
Their legs,
Yep. They have a
3 feet.
leg span. Oh, a leg span up to 3 feet. So I don't know if it says leg
Like if they
span.
stretched it out.
That's what I mean, but I don't know if it means like one leg to the other leg, like if it was doing a
I
split,
hope.
or if it means like one leg. But I have seen these crabs are very large, like so would not be surprised. So but they can so basically, yeah, going off of what Mariah said, the reason why crabs are so prevalent is that they can actually drag objects around up to about 60 pounds. So, and they can crack open coconuts and do a lot of things that a lot of other predators cannot do. So what's really sad is that these crabs, they are known on this island to eat deceased things ranging from
Oh,
people to rarely deceased people to
rarely.
rare, yeah, like rare, they don't
Okay. So
they
that's not their favorite. They're not
right.
like, ooh, dead human.
Like literally they're kind of like the land garbage eaters, they eat a lot of like dead cats, they eat a lot of dead animals. Like
Oh,
the reason I'm bringing up the cats thing is because like that was something in the article and that really freaked me the fuck out because I have a cat and you have a cat and like we love our animals very dearly. So but yeah, so to go deeply into that, some researchers, yeah, they believe that their remains, so this would be after she died. So if she ended up washing ashore on some island, she would have she died from some type of disease or injury, then the coconut crabs by that point, after she died, would have eaten her body. So during
okay.
the expedition, National Geographic reported one theory that might explain what happened to them, and that was in fact that they were eaten um on this island.
But it
So
wasn't eaten alive. It wasn't death by
not
crab.
not eaten alive. So in
Okay.
1940, British settlers found 13 bones, like you said, and they thought it could be her, but if the 13 bones did belong to her, it wouldn't have made sense because they also looked at the bones they did say like that the bones were not like shaped, like they couldn't identify if they could be a male or a female bones, which is
Yeah.
why it was, unfortunately they were unable to really truly um see. But in 1940 again, National Geographic archaeologist Frederick Hebert and his team may have found fragments of the a skull in the Uambang Museum and Cultural Center, and forensic anthropologists say it belonged to an adult female. But again, it goes back to the fact that the bones that were found on that island didn't really match up to the stature of her, being a
Hmm.
small petite woman with a size 6 shoe, like you said. So,
Right.
but unfortunately, everything was destroyed. So the idea that coconut crabs ate her body is very unlikely. It happened to somebody. It is quite possible it happened to this unfortunate soul that of the bones that they found, but it's unlikely that they are her.
Possible, yeah. And if this theory like really gets your bones going,
No one pun
gets your
intended.
body going, this is this group called Tiger, that's how it's pronounced. That's their theory. They have a whole website dedicated to like they have like hundreds of thousands of articles about this and all the theories and everything, and they're very honest. Like they're the ones that clock themselves on the shoe size. So, I respect
So
the hell out
funny.
of
That is my source too, is this tiger.org.
Yes. The full name is the International Group for Historic Aircraft Recovery. A lot of people use them because they are so well documented. That being said, I don't agree with their theory, but I appreciate it. And they could be right, and I could be
Could
wrong.
be.
I haven't been studying it as long as them. The crash and sink theory, real quick. We did talk about it. I am only bringing it up because there has been January of this year, a high-tech underwater drone took a sonar image of what looked to be the exact plane Amelia Earhart was flying 100 miles off Howland Island and in one piece. That one I was like, well, that's pretty convincing. I did look at the picture. I felt personally like the wings looked a little different. And on top of that, how would it sit for this many years without, being a little bit disgruntled? I mean, and the sonar image is not an actual image. So it couldn't even it might not even be a plane. At a different time, they took a different picture and thought it was a plane. Turns out it was just like rocks. So a lot of people are like, this is it. We found it, and we don't know. And again, the way she says, we're on you, we can't see you. For me, I don't think she was near Howland Island, even though that's probably the most like likely. I don't know, something fishy about it. Look into that solar image and let me know your thoughts, but that's that one. Okay,
Yep.
now uh Japanese capture. There's a lot with it. I think that before we go into, her being there and getting either captured or coming back. Well, actually, yeah, that's where we'll start. Irene Bolam. One of the first theories is that she came back as Irene Bolam. The real Irene Bolam died and she became her. Keep in mind they used to be friends. They're both pilots. And this rumor started when Irene was at an air pilot convention or something. I'm sure Megan has facts on this. And this guy who used to be friends with Amelia said, "Oh my God, Amelia."
Yeah, so basically, there are various Japanese capture claims that spawn this popular spin-off that Irene Bolam is in fact Amelia Earhart. Personally, I don't really believe it because I don't get what the hype would be, especially if she came back and she sued the person for saying for and I'll get into it. So basically, Irene Bolam um assert the Irene Bolam hypothesis asserts that Earhart was captured by the Japanese but not executed. Instead, she was freed and given back to the United States under an alias. Some people believe this was done in secret with the help of the president Franklin D. Roosevelt. But she was declared dead. Amelia Earhart was declared dead on 1939, I'm sorry, on January 5th, 1939, and because of that, she was, for all intents and purposes, dead. Amelia Earhart did assume to be Irene Bolam. However, this whole theory actually did make the real Irene Bolam her life a living hell. She was
Yeah.
a New York banker and a plane enthusiast who, according to some, bore a strong physical resemblance to Earhart. The hypothesis was first laid out in a book published in 1970, sparking the defamation lawsuit of Bolam, who said the authors appeared more interested in the fantasy than the fact. Bolam herself actually died in 1982 and always denied the allegations. So it actually started with this guy named Joe Jarvis, who is a retired USAF major. And while attending a social event in Long Island in 1965, he saw Mrs. Bowman and just knew that she had to be
There it
Amelia
is.
Earhart. Neither Garvis nor his disciples, Rennick among them, who I will get into in a few minutes, uh, accepts evidence that argues against this fundamental revolution. Any allegation or interpretation that fits the desired conclusion that is embraced without question, while inconvenient facts are either explained away by adding additional layers of conspiracy or simply ignored. So essentially they just were like, this is Irene. Like they both said that. So the legend is that when they first met Irene, they immediately knew that it was her. Um, and then let me just flip the page, guys. So sorry, got so many notes here.
Correct me if I'm wrong as well. She did not look like her, in my
No,
opinion.
she didn't.
I Some people said, "Oh, maybe she got plastic surgery." What? Amelia Earhart was like kind of like a person who really liked the attention, from what we see. Why would she just like want to be fucking her old friend who died? Also, how did her friend and die, and like how did they swap out? Yeah.
Exactly. It's like, what is the point of this? So, this particular article, shout out to them.
And where is Fred? No one ever mentions Fred in this theory. Did he die? Where'd he go?
Oh, it's ABC Net was the people who
Not
helped.
ABC.
Well, actually, maybe it's not. I'll make sure to add that in the cliff notes. But a lot of this spans. So Irene Bowman actually is tied very, very, very closely with the fact of this Japanese capture, mainly because there was actually a photo taken. So there is conspiracy around a photo that was taken when she was initially, quote unquote, captured in Japan
Yep,
that
I know
looked
the
like
photo
an
you're
alien
talking about.
photo. So this photo, I guess, literally it looks similar to both Irene and Earhart. And so
Amelia. Yep.
that played a big role into why literally why people think that Earhart is Bowman is, according to this legend, this Rennick and this Garvis guy, they literally think that they have such a this remarkable appearance that look alike. But the reality is that they look more alike than thousands of other women who looked similar in Northeastern European descendants. So, and then to then go on this redneck, they basically after, because it was almost like this group of groupies, essentially, just to put it in layman's terms, that just immediately assumed that Irene was Amelia. And they would literally went on to basically write a book about it. And Redneck's book offers it as evidence as computerized age progression image of Earhart at 75 that resembles a photo of Bowman at age 74. So again, he writes an entire book and uses technology or attempts to use technology to assume what Amelia would look like. In summary, there is not now, nor ever there was, cause to suspect that Irene Boland was Amelia Earhart. It was literally these groupies that came together, made a book, and wanted to basically, you know, get famous. So Tiger, which you had mentioned, they examine the court records, which are publicly available for inspection at the New York City County Courthouse in Manhattan. The court records document that on May 26, 1971, Bolam actually sued for 500,000 in actual damage and 1 million in punitive damage. There is nothing on file about a judge asking Bowman for her fingerprints.
I was
So
just gonna say that. I was gonna say I heard that she was told to supply her fingerprints, and she said no.
the file does show that the defendants moved for summary judgment. In other words, the filed a motion with the court enumerating all reasons that Bowman's lawsuit was without merit, in essence, listing all the reasons why they felt it was reasonable to conclude that Irene Bowman was, in reality, Amelia Earhart, and asking the judge to dismiss the case. On August 26, 1975, the court denied the motion. The defendants appealed the decision on May 4th, 1976, that the appellate court affirmed that decisions of the lower court, the court records end at this point, suggesting that the parties reached a private settlement. So, sorry, that's a lot of court legal jargon. So essentially, they went
She's
back
on the
and
court
forth.
transcripts.
Yeah, I guess they are available at the New York Library.
So go there.
So go there if you want to
Okay.
find the legitimate information. By their own admission, neither Jarvis nor is familiar with the terms of the settlement that ended the case, except that each of them was paid $10 for his agreement not to the courthouse, a standard condition of most settlements. From what can be documented about the case, it is almost certain that having failed to win summary judgment, also losing the appeal, um, they decided not to go to trial and reached a private settlement. So sorry, just saying, going back. So yeah, so Bowman, so there a court case was filed, but ended up going private between the person who wrote the book, this Jarvis and Rennick, and actual Irene Bowman herself. And basically, in summary, according to this article, they do not believe that Irene and Amelia are the same person, and
And
that
fingerprints weren't requested,
right. So those who
according to what
originally,
you saw.
yeah, so they said that it because the fact that everybody was just going off of an image that it looked like her, that it was unlikely that it truly was her. Yes, it was weird that person didn't offer the fingerprints, but Irene didn't offer her fingerprints. But I will say, I feel like that's pretty common. I think there are a lot of people that, especially when it comes to government and legality of things, it's pretty common for people to reject and not want to give out their personal information, especially to the government. I know that that's just a big thing, but it's kind of ironic considering
Well,
that's what you're here for. So it's like, just prove it.
exactly, but also a lot of it seemed to be hearsay. There was a lot of people that jumped on the bandwagon. A lot of people said, "Oh, she told me," and "Oh, this and that." And again, could be true. Is it likely? No, but you never know. I don't want to feel like so dismissive. I do have like a bias on which one I think is true.
Mhm.
But again, where is Fred? Fred's gone out of the picture. Also, this is where their theory gets so crazy to me is that one person was speaking, and I hate to like kind of shit on her. Apologies if it gets back to her because I know the Earhart community is a very tight-knit group. All due respect, there was this woman that came on a podcast and said that she knew this guy who was like a mortician or a doctor or something who could get into where the mortician was. And they were talking about Irene when she died because she was like by them. And she told him, or they discussed getting her fingerprints. And I guess he went to go see her dead body and came back. This is what the woman said on the podcast. The guy comes back and he says, I don't know why, but her fingerprints have been sawed off.
Like the dead
Really?
body.
Yeah, of the dead body. Really?
From the bones being burned to the fingernails being, or sorry, the fingerprints being sawed off. It's pretty
That
clear.
one, That's
People
what threw it out for me. I was like, no, no.
they be searching for
Mm.
anything.
Um, Buka, I already kind of explained. I did tell Megan we would go to Japanese theory, but I just want to say real quickly about Buka is that because the Japanese theory is also in this. Um, so there was this kid I mentioned, he saw the plane go down, a plane go down, a long time ago, during a thunderstorm, the same day that Amelia was missing. Uh, the person who is running this theory hypothesis is Bill Snively. They've gone a lot. He does a lot of work with the people, not a lot of people of the island. Like no one can go besides him and then a couple other people once they get approval from the island. It's a very small, close island. And so anyway, one time he's speaking with some locals and he says what he's doing in the area because he was backtracking on her route and he says, "Well, there there is a fucking plane like on this island, Buka, uh, a little under 100 feet deep." And he said, "Tell you what, uh, give me 5 characteristics of Amelia Earhart's plane, the plane you're looking for, because they didn't know who she was. You know, it's local island, like they don't know like the world, what the world's going on or whatever. So they didn't know what he was talking about. So Bill Snively gives him 5 characteristics and they say, okay, call us back in a couple weeks and we'll let you know what we find. So he calls them back in a couple weeks and every single characteristic was a hit. Everything. At one point, one of the divers
Okay.
said, "We were so excited. We thought that there was gold on the plane. We went in and all we saw was these metal tins. What were they?" And Bill started laughing and he goes, "Oh my God, that's the gasoline
I was
tanks."
gonna say the fuel tanks.
Yep. And like every single time they go down there, they try to disprove it and they just keep finding characteristics that match the plane.
And is this recent? Like this is a recent finding?
It's
And
it's been in the past, and I highly recommend listening to Astonishing Legends. They have all of the details on this, and really, I've listened to countless. They as in Bill Snively and Chris, what did I call him? Williamson? It's been a while. Ooh, I'm sorry, Chris. They actually went on a panel for Pratt and Whitney and asking them to have them help them determine if it's the same exact engine and all that.
oh,
Recent like
okay.
the last year or two, because they're still on this. They're every single thing that has been a match. They even found a suitcase like in an image that looked like it had the initials of Amelia's husband. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but it had his
Yeah.
initials on it.
She had his suitcase.
Yeah, well, that's what they're thinking. They don't know that for sure, but they're like, those initials would make sense. So, I mean, it's just like, for me, it's a fucking no-brainer. And they think that the reason the radio was so strong at one point for the Itasca was because of Skip. But I mean, it just makes sense. We can't see you, and there's a storm on this island, Buka, like at the same time. Like it just all lines up.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, definitely listen to Astonishing Legends. It's very, very convincing. But
I'm
also the
waiting.
Japan theory is also very convincing, which I know you have, but
Yeah, I'll get into the Japanese theory in a second. I was just gonna say, and I really worded this wrong. I'm not waiting, because that would sound very morbid. I just hope, no matter what you believe after you die, that like all these conspiracies, these mysteries, like Malaysian Airlines, what else exists in the
my God,
world,
yeah.
aliens. Like when I die, I just hope I get the answers. I just want to know. I just want to like after I die, I just want to get all the info and just be like, ah, you know? Like, I just
I
want
need
to
to know
know.
about the Malaysian Airlines.
Like literally like all the mysteries, Malaysian Airlines,
I'm
Amelia
like,
Earhart, and
ah, oh,
millions of
they did
others.
do it.
Literally, I just need to know.
We
I
know
want to know
that.
the government secrets. Like, I'm not going to do anything with this information. I just want to know. I
It's
just want to know.
so real. So real. All right, girl, lead us into our last theory here,
Woo!
hypotheses, whatever you want to call it, because I know it's a doozy. Please
By all
paraphrase.
means, I will do my best, guys. So, in theory, as we've been saying, Earhart could have chosen a safer destination. Just like as you had mentioned, that when they initially took off, that there's a possibility that when, like that they turned around and got turned around. So the reason Earhart didn't choose one of the other islands was because she would have not been welcome, and these islands were owned by the Japanese government. So, oh my goodness, we're already running out of time. How funny is that?
Well, it's
Uh,
gonna be fun for me to edit.
right? So Earhart was not going to choose these government islands because, like you had mentioned, this was during World War II, and the Imperial Japanese Navy did not take kindly to American visitors to these islands and had banned Americans from visiting even back from the 1920s, long before these mounting tensions between, the world wars. But when the US Navy searched for Earhart, they looked pretty much everywhere except for these islands, staying away to avoid political potential clash. So, the reason why this conspiracy is so prevalent is because there hasn't been enough ability for us to research it, like to have like the FBI and people involved, because we were unfortunately in the middle of a world war, which as a reminder, we had the Axis, which were
This
Germany.
was before the World War, though.
Right. But I think at this
But
point,
tensions were rising. Yes.
tensions were rising. So
Again, Amelia was friends with the president, by the way.
So these Japanese islands, widely known at the time as the Mandates, included Gilbert and Marshall Chains. They had once been owned by Germany. Japan, fighting on the side of Britain in World War One, conquered these Pacific islands and kept them after the war ended. Visionaries in the US Navy and Marine Corps had known from the start that the mandates would be key if they were ever to be a war between Japan and the United States. So again, this kind of ties into Amelia Earhart potentially being a US spy. The US knew that maybe potentially getting these islands could be an asset to them. So there's that idea that maybe she was gonna do a little flighty to go see what was happening. Um,
Would have been
there,
the perfect cover.
right, exactly. The commandant of the Marine Corps in the 1920s, John LeHue, realizing that the United States knew very little about these islands, worked with a talented, well-known, but mentally unstable officer. Love that it's described as that.
Mentally unstable.
Well-known, but very mentally unstable officer named Pete Willis to see if
Ew.
they could find out anything about these islands. And so sorry, guys, my papers are sticking together because I have too many of them.
Girl, you got 7 minutes.
um, so Ellis, this mentally unstable dude, working in the military, he did go on a trip to these islands posing as a merchant of coconut oil. He was never able to send a report on how suitable the beaches of these islands were for an invasion, and because he ended up dead before he could go back to file his report. So,
I
we
didn't
already
hear about that one.
yeah, so this is a guy that was so the US already attempting to infiltrate the island. But however, this particular guy, this Ellie's guy, he was a severe alcoholic, and it seemed like he probably died of natural causes, but at the time it was suspected that the Japanese actually killed him, and assumed him to be a spy. So this is another reason why this conspiracy is pretty important, is because the US has already been attempting to send spies abroad. So it's like, why not Amelia?
Whoa.
Exactly, right? So, there were other reasons other than this, that the US Navy thought that it was possible that the Japanese killed the Amelia. There was a lot of secrecy around these islands. The year before, the US Navy proposed an exchange of information to help build trust between the US and Japan, where the US would be allowed to visit the islands, and in exchange, the Japanese Navy would be allowed to inspect American islands off Alaska. But the Japanese actually turned down this offer. Again, making the US think something's fishy. So, again, this is all US wants these islands. Japanese are all like, no, 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 these are my islands. And so
Wow.
you know? So it is possible that Earhart flew off course and arrived at these, oh wait, hold on.
Key things that stick out to me, while you're looking real quick, and also our Zoom is gonna run out.
Yeah, you
There
give your note.
was I'm sorry?
I was gonna say, give your note and then we'll hop off and go back on.
Okay. There was plenty of people who claimed that they were guarding Amelia's plane. They said they didn't see it, but they were told to guard it and not to look at it, not let anybody look at it. It was in the hangar. A couple reports they've seen other people drive it. I don't know if I believe that. Damage it. There was a report of these people on a Jeep or some sort of thing like that where they saw Amelia and Fred in front of their graves and then getting shot and pushed into it. And then there was people who said they saw that they were in hotels and would talk to them when they would come out to use the bathroom or something like that. And that's from the Saipanese, I believe that's what they're pronounced on Saipan. A lot of mixed signals and a lot of differing accounts. And then there was also that one that apparently there was a bank heist, but instead of getting money, they found a thing full of Amelia's passports and ID information. Anyway, that is just scratching the surface on the Japan theory there. I'm sure Megan has plenty more, but
Yes, we'll be right back. We're gonna finish that up. I got a few more things and then we're gonna send off.
we're
BRB.
gonna
All right, guys. So we're gonna quickly get back into it and we're gonna finish this ass out.
You literally could have been like three parts complete. So definitely if this is interesting, do more research
Yeah.
yourselves. We're too off topic for this shit.
Yeah, we're so off topic naturally. So another reason why the US Navy thought the Japanese could have killed Earhart was that they realized the Japanese Navy would have loved to get their hands on their plane, the Lockheed Electra, which, as we mentioned in part one, was one of a kind with its fuel tanks and modified to be a flying laboratory of the latest innovations, and the improvements were being adapted to long-range warplanes such as the Lockheed's upcoming P-838 Lightning. So possibly, maybe Earhart's plane was the newest model of the fighter planes during World War II. The FBI and Navy knew
Ooh.
at the time that Japanese spies were attempting to get information from the Lockheed plan or sorry, their plans of the plane at their plant. In theory, it's possible that Earhart and her navigator flew off course naturally and arrived at a Japanese island from which the Japanese Navy, realizing they had found the most famous woman in the world, decided the best thing to do would be to kill her while keeping the killing a secret and not noting anything in any of their records. But given what we know about her voyage, that's probably most likely very unlikely. In addition to all the above elements that I actually just stated, Earhart, in her heavily loaded plane flying at an extreme range, would have needed to have enough fuel to even make it to one of those Japanese-held islands. From the
Not
course
true. It was really far out of the way.
Yep, from the course she was on and from when her radio communications were last received, it would have been impossible. There just wasn't enough gas in the plane. In all likelihood, she probably crashed somewhere and died, which is genuinely what I think, but we'll get into
Really? You think a
towards
crash and theory? Crash and
yeah.
sink?
So Rick Gillespie, yes, and we'll get into that at the end, what our thoughts are now that we're almost at the end of this. But
I know I
the
already gave my thoughts, but yeah.
Yeah, but I'll give my thoughts, I guess. Finding Amelia and so Rick Gillespie of Finding Amelia, an executive director of the International Group of Historic Aircraft Recovery, found parts of a skeleton found on Nicaragua in 1940 when they initially thought um, that she was there. Again, that goes in the coconut crab theory. So again, apologies. A lot of my notes are very overlapping. Um, there was also, let's see, this goes into that again. So, I had mentioned earlier that there was actually a photo. So there was a photo on a Japanese pier where several islanders have come forward in the past claiming to have seen Earhart in Noonan's execution, but evidence backing up their allegations never emerged. I know you had mentioned that
Yes.
briefly, that so a so this photo was a shot in Pelulu and was from a 1935 Japanese travel guide, and it was actually debunked. But this particular photo, and the reason I bring it up is
Actually, I heard that it was then later verified that the dock that they were sitting on actually was built in 1995, and that image actually was taken past like in a likely time where it could have been them.
okay. Well, because my sources say that it
I
wasn't.
debunk. Yeah, that's what Tiger says, right?
Yep.
Tiger's full of shit on that one. I'm calling them
Totally.
out. I'm
So,
calling them out. Yes, they try to do the one thing about Tiger is yes, they do their research and they are honest when their own theory is wrong. But I really do think that they were wrong about saying that that photo didn't have any merit. Um, because at first I was like, oh, okay, yeah, it was debunked, but then it comes out later that no, it was not. That definitely could have been them, and there was no white people around that time.
gotcha. Well, in all truthfulness, from all these so to lead off with that, so there is a lot of possibility that the US did have somebody, they probably had a lot of spies to spy on the Japanese, but the reality of it actually being Amelia is pretty unlikely considering her radio communication. So I personally don't believe in that. And I guess just to kind of lead off with everything, I personally believe through my research, and again, it's all up to everyone's discretion. I personally just think that there was bad communication on the radio. You had brought up a really good point about that. They mentioned that they were turning back, but no, it was not heard because there was already damage to their antenna. I believe that they genuinely did crash in the ocean because I do truly believe, similarly to the Malaysian Airlines, the ocean is such a vast, aggressive place that it's so possible for a plane to crash somewhere and then be swept in the current to a completely different destination within days or hours. And so I don't know. And maybe it's the logical side of me talking. I just really think that
I mean,
they,
we do get a little out there in these theories, so
yeah, and like,
I don't know.
I genuinely think she crashed. But
It's just
I'm
Luca's
sorry that
just
I'm
so
boring.
convincing. Luca's so convincing, though. What are your thoughts on that? They have an actual plane. It is literally a plane there. It's confirmed.
Well, I think
It's even confirmed at Lockheed.
I need to do more research into that. If that's like, because I know you had mentioned that's like a little bit of a newer finding. I would almost need to like look into that myself to almost make when like we
By
each,
newer, I mean like a couple years old, like 2018.
which that's pretty new, especially considering like she flew in 1937, like
I
right,
mean, yeah.
you know what I mean? Like this is like new evidence that I haven't had a chance to divulge in, and I'd love to look into that. If I and I think okay, I think that so going back to that, so you believe that but the plane still crashed because they found it in the water,
Yes.
right? So you
Yep.
do believe realistically that she crashed.
Yes. I think that she did crash technically, but I think that it's not by Howland Island. I think it's on Buka.
Yeah, so I guess I generically just think in general she crashed. I couldn't tell from all the conspiracies maybe which area she might have crashed. So I think you and I are both on the same page then.
The thing about the other theories that's so hard is that they all are so convincing because they're like, yeah, there's like 200 eyewitnesses. And like, why would they lie? It's like, I don't know. Why are there so many eyewitnesses saying different things? I can't figure that out.
I
And
feel like
it was really doing my head in, man.
I feel like people are just they're starved for attention. So naturally
Actually,
naturally they always want they want attention. So they're going to say whatever they can say to get on the news. So literally, like this Irene Bowman thing, this guy literally, he just first sight was like, I know this is her, and literally got sued. Literally out of money.
Blue.
Literally fucking like this gives me Brian Griffin from fucking Family Guy vibes. Like tries to be an author, writes a book, and fucking gets fucking shit on.
Get the shit on.
Gets
Nerd.
fucking
I
shit
love it.
on that nerd. So, needless to say, we hope all of you enjoyed this episode. We hope that you talk about this and please message us on the new Naturally Off Topic Instagram handle, TikTok handle that will be changed very shortly. Let us know your thoughts. What do you think happened to Amelia Earhart? If you know, you know. If you don't, you don't.
As we said last time, keep it real, keep it freaky, keep it naturally.
Actually,
Bye.
I